So today we have a review of eBay's one of the cheap flux MIG welder. Inside you have a few tools and the welder. The welder is pretty well packed. Here you could see the welding attachment. So pulled the welder out, and below that is a small box, probably some more tools or bolts and welding mask. So looking through this welding mask, and I'm pointing it up towards the light, you still won't be able to see anything because it's really dark. So this mask is probably not going to be as good as one of those self-darkening masks, which allows you to see the workpiece while you're welding until you start the welder, then it darkens. But this one's going to be dark all the time. So it looks like inside that box is a roll of flux wire for the MIG welder. They call it a MIG, but it's actually just a flux wire welder. And then here's the machine. The brand is Sunco. In the back you could see the fan outlet. There's no gas in it on this MIG welder, although it's called a MIG welder. So going to the front of this welder, and I'll just call it a flux welder from now on. Here you have the tool that's used to feed the flux wire through, and then it comes out this nozzle here. And then there's these three buttons here: min, max, 1, 2, and on, off. And this is probably the wire feed speed. So the quality of the plastic and the metal nozzle and the MIG in general so far looks pretty good for a $100 unit. So opening up the top of the unit, you can see here that here's the mechanism that allows you to feed the wire through. So this just goes into here. It goes on like this, and then the wire would go from here to here and then out. Here's a bag of some more items that goes into the feed mechanism. Here's the specs for the flux wire that's used in this MIG. Alright, so I've fed it through the feeder, and then over here there's a wheel that has settings for 8mm and 6mm. So just make sure you put it on the right setting on this wheel. And then I fed it all the way through until it comes out the tip. So now we're ready to weld. I just need to plug the wire in. This is a 110 volt unit, and then this one would be to clamp the negative ground onto the workpiece. Okay, now I'm gonna use my self-darkening helmet instead of the one that they gave inside the box, because this is much better to use. So right now I have the machine set on minimum 1 and the lowest feed speed of 0. I have this frame that I had welded earlier with a stick welder, and I'm a total amateur, so the weld is not good at all, and this actually broke off. This was a stick that I welded so that it'd go on like that, like the other side, but apparently it broke off. The other welds are holding though, so I'm going to fix this by using this MIG welder to see if it does a better job than the stick welder. Now there's rust and everything on the weld, which I'm gonna scrape off as much as I can with a wire brush before I weld. Okay, so now I'm gonna attach this grounding electrode to my workpiece, and it just gotta be grounded somewhere nearby. There's a lot of splatter, but I mean, it welded a lot better than my stick welder, I'll tell you that. Yeah, so this thing's gonna work. It's already holding that metal bar up, so even at the lowest setting it's able to do it on thin metal. This is a pretty good welder for $100. Alright, so I broke the piece back out because it was hanging above the other pipe too high, like that. There's a little gap down there, so I didn't want that little gap clearance right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and I broke it out, and then I'm gonna turn it sideways so that there's no gap this time, and now I'm gonna weld the two pieces together. There you go. I welded one side and then I let it cool, and then I'm gonna go ahead and weld the other side of it. Seems like you have to wait till it cools a little bit to continue welding. Now this pole is already pretty stiff. I'm shaking it and it's not coming loose. So even with a really crappy weld, it's already working. So this thing's holding. It's already holding better than my stick welder. Okay, so this is the final result of the welding, and this little monster I created is actually tougher than that stick welder I've been trying to use to weld this. Here you could see my old weld, and then this is my new weld. There's no improvement, of course, but hey, this thing worked really good, and the bar feels pretty firm enough for me anyways. This workpiece isn't the most ideal workpiece, but for me it's good enough. And if you're an amateur and you're totally novice, you need something straightforward, easy to use, the MIG 130, this thing works great. The setting that worked best for me was minimum, number 1, and on. And then if you just leave the feed rate at 0, that seemed to make the welding go real easy. And I'm using a 0.8 millimeter flux core. So yeah, I'd definitely give this a try if you need to weld anything and you don't know how to weld. Then this would definitely be the one that you want to use without any of the hassle. You'll probably do a better job than I do with practice, but for me this works.